The Vera Show. The Vera Show. The Vera Show. The Vera Show. Let's talk about it. 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 On the Vera Show. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
Hello, hello, hello. I am so excited about my guest tonight, Miss Martha Burich, and I am going to pull her up. Hello, hello, hello. How are you today?
I'm absolutely fabulous. So happy to be here, Vera. Love your intro.
Well, thank you so much. Those are my grandchildren singing that. Actually,
Oh, wow.
yes. Well, I am just excited that you are here, and I need to just share a little bit about Martha Burich, right? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Right.
I sh-
Burich.
I should have
Yes,
I should
Burich.
have asked you that before we got on. So anyway, I'm pulling up your bio and let me just share with our audience. Martha Burich is a master has a master's in education. She is the author of the book. Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. The book is endorsed by Jack Canfield, co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul series and the Success Principles. He says, it is my pleasure to endorse this remarkable book, knowing it has the potential to transform the lives of families worldwide. She was interviewed for the book Practical Happiness by Pamela Gail Johnson. She is a contributing author in the Chicken Soup for the Soul cookbook. And she is a popular guest on shows and podcasts, including Living Exponentially, Fearless Female, Amazing People, Teach to Teacher, Teacher to Teacher. Martha was the show host of Healthy Moments at BlueWaterHealthyLiving.com. She was nominated for Volunteer of the Year at Blue Water Recovery. There is so much more I can share about her, but you know what? I am going to give her the floor and I am going to let her share more about her story. So, Martha, please share with our audience, what was your childhood like? Because, we're talking about parents and children, and that's both of our platforms. So, what was your childhood like, and how did it get you to your purpose and your passion? So, I'm going to give you the floor.
Great question, Vera. Let's start where I always start. Mom loved my brothers better. Let's just face it. And that really did shape me. And we'll talk more about that later because if you have more than one child, that's pretty much all you've heard all your life. You loved her better, you loved him better, whatever. Anyway, but I took it to heart, and it really did shape a lot of my behaviors, and I used it as an excuse for a long time. But let's go before that. Let's go before I even started thinking that. I was an unwanted child. My father was a prisoner of war of the Germans in World War II for 2 years. And this was before any of us were born or even thought of. But anyway, or my parents were married at the time, and my mother became a women's Army Corps while my dad was overseas. Anyway, my father was a prisoner of war. And when he came home, he was definitely a changed person. And when he came home, what happened is because of his experiences in the war, he became a heavy drinker and a gambler. So they had my mother had I had a 7-year-old brother when I was born and a 2-year-old brother, and my dad gambled and drank all the money away. So when my mother realized that I was on the way, she was devastated. She was thinking, "Oh my God, I have 2 children already. I can't feed. How am I going to handle her? How am I going to feed this other one?" So my mother I was unwanted. Now, once I was born, of course, she loved me and took care of me. But also, I came from an Italian family where um, boys were revered and girls were not appreciated very much. In fact, we could go back even further. My grandfather made my mother quit school at grade 8 to go to work so she could make money so my uncles could go to college.
Oh my
So,
goodness.
there was kind of a lot of history here and how women were not appreciated in that world. But anyway, so even though my mother, she never hurt me. She was not a hitter or a yeller. She was a kind woman. I'm gonna start crying. She was very very gentle woman. So was my father. My father was a very nice man. He wasn't abusive or anything like that. He was just, I guess, who lets their children go without food, you know? But anyway, so I always knew that I had to be good. My mother would tell me stories about how what a good baby I was because I sensed that my mother was. I'm guessing that my mother was very very troubled and worried. But then again, they used to have parties all the time. My mother was very big in the Catholic Church that we lived on base, and she would have parties all the time. People were at our house all the time. So I really I don't remember a lot of it. My parents divorced when I was about 5. So I did grow up all the time with this feeling that, my brothers were more appreciated than I was. And then I had a stepmother who hated girls. She had 2 girls of her own. We were all as females were really treated like dogs, and the boys were completely revered. So that has definitely had an impact, I think, on my upbringing. But my mother would constantly tell me how great my brothers were. Oh, Billy's so creative, and Al is a genius. He's a genius. He's a genius. And, I think to myself, what am I, chopped liver? So yes, it's definitely had an
Yes.
impact on upbringing. But it pushed me. You'll hear a lot of times sibling rivalry will push siblings to be better. Especially you hear a lot about that in the sports world, where well, it's because my brother was such a good athlete or whatever that I thought, well, I better step up to the plate. I've got to get better, otherwise I'm not going to be able to compete. So people think it's a negative, but in many many instances, it's actually a positive. So and that's how it worked for me. It made it so that I was the first person in my family to graduate college. My brother, the genius, and he really was very. He made his own robot when he was 10, put a
Wow.
television together, built a television when he was 16, took a car apart, put it back together when he was 16. I mean, he really is a mechanical genius. But anyway, so that kind of, I had to find my place in the family and how was I going to get my mother's love, and I did it through school, through being a good student, which has
Yes.
really served me very well because being a good student, then I became a good writer, and I've
Yeah.
used that pretty much all through my life.
That's awesome. Now, a couple points I want to make because I remember I had an opportunity to be with among 4 teenagers at different times in one day.
Mhm.
Out of those 4 teenagers, only one of them had a decent relationship with their parent. And I'm saying that to
Wow.
say one out of, yes, out of 4 kids, or maybe it was a Hispanic girl, a biracial boy, a white boy, a black boy, and a black girl. So 5. Out of those 5 kids, only one of them had a decent relationship with their parent. And each of them had a different issue with their parent. And you
Mm.
talking about comparing the young white boy that I talked to, he told me, he says, "Oh, my mother compares me to my brothers all the time, and she makes me feel so less than." you know,
Mm, yeah.
and it really does impact upon a child when parents compare their children and children know that there's
Mm,
favorites in the family.
yeah.
I want to talk about that because there are things that parents can do, even though you may have your favorite child. Now, both of us raised one child,
Mm,
so that was not an issue with us. But so often parents compare their children's. Why can't you be more like her? Why can't you be more like him? And in
mm,
so doing, it can devastate that child. It can cause lack of confidence, lack of self esteem, and create some major, major issues. In your case, what you did, you compensated or overcompensated because you wanted to show that you were just as great, that you had just as much, and that you were just as special as your
mhm.
brothers. We've got 800 people here watching this. This is awesome. If
Woo!
any of you want to
Wow.
comment, by all means,
Fabulous.
do so. This is amazing. Okay. Anyways, this
Wonderful.
is so, so, so important. And then there were other issues with the other kids. And like I said, we're talking, these are issues across the board. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with anything but how we are impacting on our children. And it's
Exactly.
across the board. It's across, people are hurting across the board.
And
We have
Vera,
a
most of what I talk
comment.
about today is in my book. So yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. The strategies that I used to compensate for myself, but also to raise my son, to deal with my students. Those are all the things that help me establish those relationships. And it's really
Absolutely.
interesting how you bring up that comparison thing because what happened with me is that I was insecurely attached, and I remember at age 15 because I wasn't insecurely attached. I don't think so much because I thought my mother loved them more, even though I did believe that. I think it was that whole thing that um, I was so worried about her and about measuring up to her and to
Yes.
making her happy. And
Yes.
so
I want to
I was
we've
so
got,
insecure. Go ahead.
excuse me, I want to kind of acknowledge the audience. So,
Oh
Darlene, who
yes,
also happens to
so
be my
exciting.
niece, thank you for watching. She says it can also create conflict between siblings. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Did you have any
Hmm.
conflict between you and your brothers?
Oh yes, yes. I used to try to get them in trouble all the time.
Oh,
Let's be
that's
honest.
funny. Hey, honesty is the best policy. That's funny. Were now you were the baby as well, right? The only girl
Right,
and the
right.
baby. And let me also say that mothers tend to dote on their sons more so than
Mm.
they do their daughters. Would you not agree with that?
And well, and you know what else is interesting? Now listen to this. When students go to college, when they go to visit their colleges, mothers bring the sons and dads bring the daughters. You'll talk to registrars at colleges, and when they have those open days, um, come and view the college, they say that that is overwhelming the way it happens. So it appears that mothers attach to their sons and fathers attach to the daughters. So for
Yeah,
whatever
and that
reason, and you know what else? That's a good thing because men need to learn, how to treat women. Women need to learn what is a good man, what is a good relationship. So it's important to have a good
absolutely.
relationship with.
As a matter of fact, it is, I have found, oh my God, we got 1,000 people in here. I have
Oh,
found,
exciting. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
what I have found. I used to drive Uber and Lyft, and I would pick up women at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning going to meet some guy. And because of what I do, I would always ask, so what type of relationship did you have with your father? And I'm telling you,
Mhm.
in most cases, either they didn't have a relationship with their father or they had a bad relationship with their father.
Mhm.
And as a
And
result, go ahead.
yes.
As a
Well, there was a
result, they're
judge who said
looking,
pretty much said the same thing.
really?
Yes, he said that he never had a criminal come before him in court who had a good relationship with his father. Most of them didn't even have the father in their lives.
And that is so, fathers are so important in their children's lives.
So
And
important.
unfortunately, there are many
Exactly.
mothers that keep fathers from being involved in their children's lives. And what I want to say to
And
our
yes,
audience, it's not about the mother, it's not about the father, it's all about these children. It's about your
exactly. And
children.
okay, and we always have to keep that in mind. And here's dads are different than moms. Let's just face it. And one fella, he had his grandson out, and he had a little motorcycle, and the grandson looked to be about 3 or 4. And they had a little motorcycle, and they had a field with they're going round and round. So dad and grandpa were out there with the grandson. And so the grandson was coming back around on his motorcycle, and grandpa said, "Hey, you want to go faster?" Now said no mother ever. But yeah, the kid said, "Yeah, Grandpa, yeah, I want to go faster." Well, Grandpa turned up the throttle on this little 3, 4-year-old child's little motorcycle so that it did go faster. And he just sped off and had a really good time. That's the kind of stuff dads do. They do these crazy things that mothers are like, "Oh my goodness, he needs a helmet. Oh my goodness, he has to have this. Oh my goodness, that." Whereas dads are like, "Come on, let's have some fun." They'll throw the baby in the air and catch it. And we're like, "Oh my
Yes,
goodness." So, yeah, dads do different things. And also, dads won't put up with as much as moms will in many, many cases. So the child really needs to have the yin and the yang, the male and the female
absolutely.
energy.
Absolutely. It is so important. Now, I want to talk about, how do we raise happy, responsible, loving children? Now, both of us, now I
That's
raised my son as a single mom, and I can say he's one of the most positive people you'll ever meet, for real. But anyway, there are things that you can do even before your child is born to help instill that greatness in them, that confidence in them. So I'm going to let you talk, because this is a topic that is just really, that's what I do. We are coaches working with parents and their kids. So I'm going to give you the floor.
it's just like you said earlier, Vera. You played classical music before your son was even born. To him in the womb, you talked to him. I remember my husband and I would talk to Anthony in the womb. We were so looking forward to him coming, and we would read just like you did. We would read stories. And after he came, we read stories all the time. I remember when Anthony was in third grade, he was reading stories to me. He would come home from
Yes,
school and tell me. We would have this thing. What was the best thing that happened to you, and what was the worst thing that happened to you? And
yes,
here's a little suggestion for parents: don't ask your child what happened at school today. Oh yeah, nothing.
right.
That's what's the how was work? It was okay. No, no, no. What was the best thing? What was the worst thing that happened to you? What was the most interesting thing? Oh, did anything devastating happen? Did something upsetting happen today? And what was the best thing, the worst thing, the most interesting, the most boring, um, the most different, the most
Yes,
same. Ask it in a different way so that you can get that information. I knew more about what's going on in my son's classrooms than the teacher a lot of times. So ask it a different way what's going on,
yes.
and listen, listen, listen.
Listen,
Don't give
listen.
advice. Don't tell your child how he should think or feel or believe. Just let him get it out. And let me tell you a
Yes,
story about that. One day, Anthony was 10, he was about 10, and he went out with a friend and the friend's father. So Anthony comes home. Well, they had all gone shopping, and the friend's father bought the friend a toy, but he didn't get Anthony one. So Anthony comes home and he's mad. He goes, "Mom, you won't listen to this. He bought him a toy. He didn't buy me a toy." And me being, the good mother, got to correct him. "Well, what did you expect? You're not his son." Oh dear, that was not the right thing to say. And he said, "You don't understand. I'm never talking to you again." And I realized I had, pulled done the wrong mother thing by trying to correct his feelings. And I said, I
Yes.
really apologize. And he,
And
tell me
and that's
again,
the
and
point.
I'll listen this time. And he did. He said the whole thing back again. I can't believe it. That I should eat. Why didn't he buy me a toy? Blah blah blah. And I said, man, it sounds like you're really hurt and mad about it. He goes, yes, I
Yes.
am.
And
And then he goes, "Oh," and well, then he
and
said, okay, I'm gonna go play. That was all. He just needed to be heard.
exactly. Exactly. Children need to be heard, and their feelings need to be acknowledged. You know,
Let
it
me tell you, two
emotions
more
only
instances.
last emotions only last what, 2 minutes, and then it's over.
Hmm.
But within those 2
Right.
minutes we need to process what that child is feeling, letting them know, telling, asking them, so how are you feeling about this? How did that make you feel when he didn't get a gift for you? And then
And accept them.
understanding it without judgment. Oftentimes
Right.
parents will listen to their children, but then they want to judge, or they want to
Mhm.
let them, give their opinion. Well, sometimes your child just needs to vent. They just need to be able to share what they're thinking, what they're
Exactly.
feeling. And it also teaches critical thinking when you allow them to
Mhm.
process what it is that they're going through.
And when all your interactions with your child are corrections or telling them what they did wrong, your child will take you out of their quality world, which means they're not going to tell you things that really mean something to them because
Absolutely.
they're afraid of judging them.
Absolutely.
So I
Absolutely.
want
I
to give you
mean,
two
go
more
ahead.
examples of that. One is okay. A little girl wakes up from her nap and she says, and mom says, "Oh, how are you?" She goes, "Well, I'm still tired." And mom goes, "How can you still be tired? You just woke up." No, all mom had to do was say, "Oh, so you just woke up and you're still tired. Is that right?" Yes. The end. Do you think you need to go
And
back to sleep? What do you think? Acknowledge.
in addition to that, the child saying they're tired, it could be that they're tired because they stayed up too late that night, and now they've got to go to school and they're tired. So might
Mm,
want to process
mm,
that.
mm.
Okay, so why do you think you're tired? What time did you go to bed last night? Do
That's
you
good.
think that might have caused you to
Ah,
be tired right now? You know?
that's
And
good.
we
That's
got
your older
another.
children.
Yes, we've got another comment. She says, sadly, a lot of us weren't allowed to be heard, just seen.
Mm,
Those days are past and gone. But I know I grew up like that. Children should stay in a child's place, which is true, which is true. But
mm,
that child's place also includes being able to be acknowledged, and being able to be
that's
heard, and being able to be felt and seen. And she also says
right.
it's okay to step away from that tradition and allow children to be individuals. Absolutely. Children need to be individuals. And and
Mm-hmm,
kids are so smart. They are
mm-hmm,
so intelligent. And all we need to do is let them know, affirm who they are and what they have to offer. This is so important. We've got so
yes.
many,
So you want
and
to tell them what their good qualities are. I like the way you do that. Oh, I saw how nice you were with so and so when he broke that, and you helped him fix it. Oh, I noticed how kind you are to your baby brother, baby sister, whatever,
yes,
to the dog,
yes,
to the animals. I know.
yes,
Thank you so much for picking up plates, for putting the plates in the sink. I really appreciate your help. It really helps me. Constantly
yes,
telling the child what they do right,
yes.
not what they
And
do wrong.
exactly. I remember a few years ago, my grandchildren, and my one granddaughter had a banana that she ate. Okay. And my other granddaughter had shared her banana with one of the other children. So the one that
Mm,
ate her banana was all upset, because her
mm,
other sister wouldn't share her banana with her. And so I was
mm,
like, well, let's process this. Did you have a banana? She said, yes. I said, and what did you do with it? She said, I ate it. I said, and now your sister is willing to share her banana with your little sister and you're upset. And
Oh,
so, and then I said, let's think about this. So she sat down beside me, and then she said, you know what? That you're right. That wasn't right. And then she said, I should go give her a hug. I was like, yes,
oh, that's
yes,
really sweet. And
yes,
I want to push on this a little bit more, Vera, and that is, okay, let's say your child, you have a friend come over to play. Now, sometimes we force our children to share all their toys. I don't let people have my car. I don't let people have my toys. So why would you force your child to share all their toys? So before a child comes over, here's a conversation you could have. So and so's going to come over. What toys do you not want them to play with? We'll put them away. Let's only put out the toys that you're willing to let someone else play with. Okay? So that way no one, you won't be upset, and you won't have to worry about something that you really like getting broken. Will that work for you? Because like I said, I don't share my toys with people. So why are we forcing children to share their most precious things to them? Because the toys that they have are like our adult cars and things. So
yes,
have respect for the, don't force them to be giving things, letting other people use their favorite things. We don't. And that's the same
right.
way. Don't force your child to be hugging Uncle Joe or Auntie Sis or whatever, because that's telling the child that their body doesn't belong to them. That that they're forced to do things that they don't want to do. If they don't want to hug Auntie Sis, they shouldn't have to.
And
Say,
kids
okay,
pick
you don't
up
want to
on,
hug her, all right.
and you made a comment when you said about, and Dar says yes. You made a comment about, does that work for you? When we engage our kids and include them in the decision making process, even if the decision is the final decision of the adult, getting that feedback,
Mhm.
especially if it's a family kind of situation, getting feedback from your children so that they feel a part of what it is that you're planning. Even if you choose not
Mm,
to do what they did, you appreciate the fact that they gave their feedback and
exactly.
participated in that.
Exactly. No, let me give you another example, Vera.
Okay.
Anthony was, I think it was third grade, 8 or 9. And we were at a teacher's conference, and the teacher said, Anthony's a really good boy, but sometimes when he finishes his work, he won't help anybody else. So I call him over, and I said, Anthony, and here's what your teacher said, because I wanted everybody to hear the same thing. Nothing behind anybody's back, everything in front of everybody. And you should really do that the same. If you hear somebody say something about your child, put everybody together and get your child's view too. I said, Anthony, is that
Yes.
right? And he said, yes, it is. He said, yes, it is. I said, well, how come you won't help other kids? He said, here's why. Because when the teacher gives instructions, they didn't listen and they were disruptive. And that's why they couldn't get their work done. So I'm not going to help them, because all that really does is make everything worse for everybody. And it
Oh my
rewards them for not
goodness.
doing the right
So
thing.
with him saying that in front of the teacher, how did she respond to that?
Well, yeah, then she realized what was going on. Yeah, because what was in her mind was, oh, he needs, kids should help each other, should help each other. She didn't realize, and the child needed help. The child that we were talking about, he really did need help. But the reason he needed help is because he wouldn't pay attention. He did not discipline himself enough when the teacher was talking to take notes, to listen, to write things down, or just to stop talking. So he needed to have some new behaviors, and he needed more help in listening and paying attention, which is, when you have a challenge like that, you need to be helped at home too. So if your child has attention deficit or problems like that, you can't just send them to school and expect the teacher to be able to solve all that. The teacher's got 20 other children who have similar, some other problems too, and usually doesn't even have any help. And sometimes she has one aide. So you can't just send your child to school and expect the teacher to teach them everything. You need to
Well,
have structures and procedures in place at home that help your child
absolutely.
develop self-discipline, quick
Absolutely.
skills.
Because parents are a child's first teacher. Parents are your children, you are your child's first teacher. And whatever it is that you're teaching them, it's going to move into the classroom anyway. One of the things, one of the points, and you and I talked about this before we came on, about the cursing that's going on in
Mm,
families and kids. I remember there was a grandmother. She was in her early 40s and she had a 2-year-old and a 3-year-old. And this woman cursed like a sailor. And I told her,
mm,
I said,
mm.
now, when these kids get in school and they're cursing at the teachers, they're cursing at other kids, and the school calls you and tells you that this is going on, you don't have a leg to stand on because they're only doing what they see, what they hear.
That's right.
A 6-year-old just the other day was cussing like a sailor in an office
Mm.
building. And boundaries, kids need boundaries. We need boundaries. All right. I could go on. I know I have a commercial I need to play. I'm going to play that and then we'll come back.
All righty.
Yes. All right. We'll be back.
This has been great.
Yes.
Mama Knows creates high quality products that are available to be used on multiple textures of hair. Her goal is to bridge the gap to stop people from having to use multiple products because of families with multiple hair types. Her products are currently being used on men, women, children of all ethnicities. Mama Knows products are available at www.mamaknowsproducts.com. That's www.mamaknowsproducts.com. You can also find her on Instagram at Mama Knows Products because Mama knows what you need.
Let me tell you about these products. These products are amazing. They are great for all types of hair conditioners, hair serums, moisturizers, gels, all kinds of things they smell great. They smell wonderful and they work. So you want to check out mamaknowsproducts.com. Why? Because Mama knows what you need. So check out mamaknowsproducts.com. Yes. Okay. All right. Now, let's get back to let's talk about let's talk about responsibility. One, but before we do, I want to talk about ADHD for a minute. My son was diagnosed with ADHD, but whenever he was into his music or anything that was related to music, he could sit for hours upon hours upon hours focused on that.
Mm.
So, oftentimes, if we can find out what the gifts, the talents are of our children and steer them in that direction, what we find also, children with ADHD are usually exceptionally bright. And the
Mm.
causes of ADHD has a lot to do with how their learning styles and their abilities. You cannot expect a child that has ADHD to sit in a classroom where there's nothing but lecture and they not misbehave. It's just not going to happen.
Right, but you know what's interesting? They'll get on TikTok or Facebook and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll for hours, right? Or they'll get on a
Yes.
video game and go for hours. It's because it's what you said. It's the engagement and it's that quick hit of dopamine. And also, boys are completely not catered or cared for enough. School is not for boys. Boys need to be outside, running, jumping, playing, getting dirty in puddles. And to take a young, especially a boy, girls, we can sit, but boys, it's not, it's robbing them of their ability. They need to be outside learning, doing, moving all the time. But you know how the world has really changed from being outside 24/7 pretty much on the farm to now being indoors almost all the time. And it's rare when you see a child out playing. So yeah, things have definitely changed. So you want to get your boys outside as absolutely much as you can, and see if you can get them into little league, any kind of activity where they're busy doing things, learning, building.
I agree,
So
but
yes, it's very very
I
important.
agree. I agree wholeheartedly, but I also want to suggest that that needs to be applied to girls as well. In that
Hmm.
right now,
Hmm.
girls, women, I mean, females are as what's the word? Females are just as um, desirous of some of these things as boys are.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that activity needs to exist. We need to get our kids off of all of this technology, get them out into the parks and doing things with them. And also, one of the other points, when you have multiple children in the home, make sure you're spending quality time with each one of them, separate and apart. That is so
Hmm.
important. I remember having a father come to Georgia with his son to take him to the Braves. And I said, that we were talking, and he says, "Oh, I have four children, but this is what he likes to do. So this is his and my thing. But I have other things special that I do with my
Hmm.
girls and with my other son." And so giving that quality
Hmm.
time is so important. It is essential. Whether you have one child or whether you have five, six, seven, or eight, give each of them that quality time. It is so
Hmm.
important.
Good point. Very good point. Yes.
Okay, so responsibility.
Oh, so start them doing chores. A 1-year-old can match socks. Okay, she can put the blue sock with the blue sock. He can put the white sock with the white sock. So they can have them doing chores, putting the sippy cup away, putting their plate into the sink, whatever it is they can do. Get step stools. Make it so that the child can do as much as absolutely possible. By the time they're 3 and 4 years old, get those little brooms that are their size.
Yes,
Because you know what? Keeping the family together and the home clean is everybody's job. It's not just mom and
everybody's
dad. It's not just the
responsibility.
adults. If we put it
Absolutely.
in a place, it's yeah, it's all our responsibility. And this teaches us empathy. So, when a child does things for their parent, for someone else, they're taught, if they're responded to right, oh, they're taught, you know what, I'm helping. I'm useful. I have
Yes,
purpose. I have a reason. I'm appreciated. And
yes.
you do those things, and mom or dad says, it really helps me when you do that. And you have to take the time to let the child do these things. Yes, it's going to slow you down having the child help you cook and do things. Yes, it's going to slow you down, but that sense of accomplishment, purpose, and I belong can't be replaced.
Absolutely.
Can't be
And
replaced.
see, I was a single mother. I raised my son from the time he was 6 months old because I left an
Mhm.
abusive marriage and I was not about to raise my son in that type of environment. And so I worked full time, I was going to school, and I was raising my son. So it was very important that he learned responsibility at an early age.
Hmm.
At 4 years old, he was vacuuming. I would pick up the big pieces and he was vacuuming at 4 years old and felt
It's
so
wonderful.
proud. Mom, look what I did. And then at 8 years old, he was in the kitchen with me cooking, and he loves to cook. Even now, he loves to cook. And there were times when he was 12, he was cooking dinner for me. So that responsibility is important. Teaching your children responsibility is important, and also teaching them to accept responsibility for their actions and their behaviors at an early
Mhm.
age.
Exactly. Well, 3 and 4 year olds on the farm are feeding the animals. The 3 and 4 year olds are feeding the chickens and the goats and the pigs and the cows, even. So they all have their jobs on the farm. There's one little 4 year old boy. He's got his own little Jeep. It goes about 5 miles an hour, 3 miles an hour, and he carries the hay to the cows. So yes, we discount how much children can do. Oh, and something I want to make I really want to make this point. The number one reason children are abused is because of toilet accidents. Potty training should not start until age 3 because the muscles aren't developed. Now, if you say to a child, if the child says, I have to go potty, and you say, can you hold it? And the child says, no, their muscles aren't developed yet. And there's two muscles. There's the solid muscle and the liquid muscle. Okay, so that's two different parts of the body. So a lot of children, they can control the liquid easier than the solid. So be very, very careful that you aren't putting undue pressure on your child to potty train early. And I want to say it again, that is the number one reason children are abused is because of toileting accidents. So really be mindful of that. And there is a book, if you're going through that, well, let me tell you this story. My mother said I was potty trained at 9 months. Yeah, right, Mom. Please. She held me over a toilet most of my life. There's no possible way. Oh, Martha was potty trained at 9 months. Yeah, right. So when your friends are all bragging about how their child's potty trained at a year and a half, 2 years,
Wow.
please, 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 don't believe them. Okay,
Yes.
don't believe
Now,
them. Maybe a child
right.
can hold it once in a while, but it is not. You have to let them expect.
Yes. I think my son was
So,
potty
and
trained
also
by the
another thing
time he was
I really
2.
want to make this.
Go ahead.
Ah, well, that's interesting.
He was walking before 8 months. I mean, he was,
Oh my goodness!
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And I am convinced that he developed as quickly as he did because of the music that I played on my stomach before he was born. As a matter of fact,
Well, that could very much. Yeah.
studies have shown that Baroque and classical music, when you're playing that on the stomach, it does something to the brain waves and it enhances. And he really was advanced at an early age. I want to talk about your books,
Because
and so I'm
yeah,
going to pull up your book. And we've been mentioning things that she has in her book. Yes, you can raise happy, responsible children. And it begins with you, parents. Understanding, but also understanding that oftentimes adults have their own unresolved issues that stem from their childhood. And sometimes that makes it kind of difficult to do what you need to do with your child if you haven't resolved your own issues. So
that's
that's
right, and that's
another
a very
point.
good point. Yes, that's a very good point because you know what? We're all learning and growing. When we have children, who's ready? Who's ready? I don't care
Right.
if you got 10 brothers and sisters. You might be more ready than the rest of us, but when you have a child, it's a whole new experience. This
It
is your
is.
child. Just like in
It is.
the grandparent relationship is completely different from the parent relationship. Yes, definitely. So when we have a child, we're all just trying to figure it out, and most of us are still reliving high school. I was very lonely in high school. My brothers were both social butterflies. So was my mother. But me, if I had one friend, I considered myself lucky because I just had no social skills at all in high school and felt very isolated.
Well,
So
do
I
you
lived
think?
that until I
Well,
figured it out.
do you think that you being like that was as a result of you feeling the way you did towards your mom and how she felt towards you?
Well, a lot of things. I could have just as easily been defiant and said, "Well, I don't care what you think of me," but I was so overly concerned with what everybody thought of me.
Hmm.
So, each child's temperament is different, and you have to work with each child in their own way. But then when you can become a certain age, once you get to be around 15, 16, you got to start growing up and realizing if it is to be, it's up to me. And
Right.
if I have problems and if I okay so what if my let's say my mother does love my brother better. All right, is that an excuse for me not to excel in my life? Is that an excuse for me not to be happy and to do the things that bring me happiness and to help me be a is that an excuse to keep me from being a useful human being? No, unless I
No,
make
it's
it one.
not. But so oftentimes, because of things that have happened in our childhood, sometimes it's really, really hard to get past that. One of the things that really helped me to get past that was a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt, which she said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your permission." Once
Right,
I
that's right,
understood that, then I
that's
also
right.
understood it didn't matter what other people thought. It didn't matter what other people said. It didn't matter what other people, how they even treated me, because I knew who I was, and
Well, let me give
understand.
you an example. Oh, Vera, if I were to say to you, you have green hair, you'd laugh at me. You'd go, my hair's not green. Yeah. But if I were to say to you, Vera, you're a terrible mother, you'd be like, what? And the reason for that is because back in the back of your mind, you're like, well, I wasn't a perfect mother. So you kind of believe it a little bit. So what happens is we drop into it. We believe when people say things to us, well, you're not very pretty. I'm not very pretty because we have that doubt in our mind. Well, or we could say, well, you know what? That's your opinion. That's your
Right,
thank you
but
very much. That's your opinion.
right, right. But it's up to
So what
parents.
we take other people's opinions and we believe them. Who are they? I'm sorry, my opinion's the most
Exactly,
important.
exactly. And
When
that's
I
why it's
when I was
important. uh, I'm sorry.
not to say negative things to your children, but to help them develop
Absolutely.
and to get better. But yes, not to insult them. Don't make fun of them. Don't talk poorly about them behind their backs. If you're going to talk about your child, always say good things. And there's nothing better than for your child to overhear you speaking well of them. So if you know your
Right.
child is in earshot, say something good about them and you're talking to someone. Do not speak poorly about them. And let's say you're divorced, do not speak poorly about your ex, because what happens is you set your
Please.
children up for then your child thinks, oh my goodness, okay, mom's really doesn't like dad, but I love dad. But if I
And
tell
it's so
mom, if I,
confusing for
I say
children.
good things about dad to mom, she might not love me. It puts your children in a terrible, terrible,
Terrible
terrible position.
situation.
So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
only speak
And
well with people in front of your children.
and not only that, parents, don't argue in front of your kids. If
Oh,
you're
good,
going to
good.
have an argument, do it in your
Yeah,
bedroom, go outside. You don't want your children to see all that. And if they do see it, then they also need to see
mm,
you making up. They need to see the
yeah,
loving
because
side.
they feel it and they think it's their fault. When parents argue, doesn't matter what the reason. Anytime anything happened, I thought it was my fault. When anybody argued, I don't know why, but I always thought it was my fault. And I think a lot of children are divorced that happens to them. They take on things that are have nothing to do with them,
But that's
anything
because
negative.
parents insinuate their kids into their adult stuff, and they should not do that.
Hmm.
Parents insinuate children in the things that are going on with their mate or with
Right,
other adults, and that should not happen,
exactly. So,
because what you're doing is you're
no,
setting your child up for insecurities and all of those
right,
kinds of things. One of the other things you don't want
exactly.
to, there is a way to correct without criticizing. Let me say that again. There is a way to correct without criticizing,
Yeah.
without belittling, without character assassination. And where your child is concerned, one of the ways that you might want to correct something is by asking questions. What made you do that?
Mm,
How did you come up with that idea? Help me understand your process. How could
You
you
know,
have
I
done
had
it
a student,
differently?
those are good questions. I had a student in my child psychology class. Her son was 2 or 3, and he put his shoes in the microwave. Well, she spanked him. I said, why would you spank him? She said, he did a bad thing. I said, how many things has he seen you put in that microwave that don't make any sense? He's 2. What do you expect from him? And he thought, well, you know what? I'm going to warm my shoes or do an experiment or whatever. Who knows what he thought? He was 2, but he certainly didn't deserve a spanking for it. What he
Yeah.
deserved was to be explained, sweetheart, we don't do that.
Yes,
We only
exactly.
put food in the
Explain.
microwave. We don't put shoes. Explain. You know, if
Ex-
someone were to hit me every time I made a mistake, I'd be sitting in the middle of the room crying my eyes out, afraid to move.
Well,
And there are children like
hitting,
that.
right, but hitting, well, first I want to comment, I want to deal with this comment. She says parenting is complicated. Yes, it is. And we have to realize that our parents were human and parented like they were parent. Absolutely. Absolutely. Parents parent the way that they were parented. But
Mhm.
that does not necessarily mean that it's the best way, nor does it mean that it cannot change. And our past
Exactly.
does not define our future. And as parents,
Exactly.
we don't have to raise our children the way that we were raised, especially if the way we were raised resulted in some stuff going on. I want to talk I want to talk a little bit about hitting and yelling, because when we are constantly hitting our children, what we're saying to them is that's how you resolve conflicts. That's how you resolve your
Mhm.
issues. No, that's not how you resolve your issues. You want to speak on that?
Well, and plus, usually if you hit your child, you're angry. So you're hitting in anger.
Yes,
So you're getting out your own frustration on the child. And the best time to talk to a child about their behavior is when everybody's calm. So
yes,
the better choice would be, you know what? I'm really angry right now. So why don't you go in your room? Let's both calm down. And then when we're both calm, we can talk about this. But right now, I'm not calm enough to talk about that. You need to be the example for your children. And
yes,
you need, you know what else?
absolutely.
Just because it makes you mad doesn't mean anybody else needs to know. You know, just because you're in a bad mood doesn't mean anybody else need to know. You know, be quiet. Be quiet. If you are aggravated about something, you need to calm down and
Yes,
figure out how you're going to
breathe.
solve it. Let's say your child doesn't take out the garbage or whatever. Well, guess what? Put up a sign. They forget to do this, they forget to do that. Well, then they need a chore chart. A lot of times, stop the nagging, stop talking, start doing. So tell the child, you know what? You rarely take the garbage out. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you till 7 o'clock to take out the garbage. If it's not out by 7:01 and I have to take that garbage out, you got to pay me $5 because when other people do our work for us, we have to pay them, don't we? Isn't that right? Yes,
Yes,
exactly. It is not my job to take the garbage out. It's your job. So if I have to do it, you have to pay me. Is that understood?
I
So have
love
that
it.
conversation, child.
Yes,
Have
and
that
that's
conversation
teaching
rather than the constant nagging.
responsibility.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
responsibility. Your little ones need a chore chart. They need a little thing that says, okay, up by this time, brush your teeth, blah, blah, blah. At nighttime, have a routine at night. They don't need a bath every night unless the kid's dirty. You know what? That's taking up too much time. And these days, we're all so busy. So unless the kid's really dirty, they don't need to have a bath every night. I think we're kind of ridiculous here in America about this constantly having to have a shower every day, blah, blah, blah. But if the kid's dirty, okay, wash him up, clean him up, maybe give him a quick shower or maybe even a sponge bath, right? They don't always have to have a big long bath.
Yes,
Get it
yes,
done. Get it done. And it's
yes,
cleaning, right? It's cleaning. I want to get the dishes
yes,
done. I want to get clean and get out of here. I want to spend all
right.
day sitting in the bathtub. So
Exactly. We got
so
another comment. She says, we
mhm.
didn't spank, but I'm sure at times they prefer it over their dad's lecture. But talking to your kids,
Ah,
is important, but yelling is not. Yelling can cause trauma. It can cause
Mm,
depression, anxiety, phobias, people becoming inward and shy because they're afraid to say anything because they don't know how they're going to be, how people are going to relate or respond to that. So, yelling, there are
right.
different types of yelling. We don't have time to get into all those right now. But if you're yelling because you're angry and you're frustrated, breathe, breathe.
And then there's your
Say,
goes to school, something happens that aggravates them. They're yelling, they're screaming, and then they're causing school disruption and every other kind of disruption, and they don't know how to calm themselves because
and I've had,
nobody's shown them. They have
right, I've had
these
teachers.
role models.
Yes, I've had teachers tell me that they can tell the difference between a child who comes from a home where there's constant yelling and a child where it's
Mm,
not so much. In fact, studies have shown that brain waves are different in children that are yelled at
mm.
constantly and those that are not.
Wow,
So those are things that we will,
wow.
and if you know, research if you think you don't, I mean, if you don't know, but we're here to take
Hmm.
today to just encourage parents. And we're not here to beat you up. We're not here to say, oh, you're a bad
Exactly.
parent. No, we're not here to say that. We're here to say that when we know better, we do better.
We do better. And it's one
And
day at a time. Whatever you did yesterday, forgive yourself and say, you know what, I'm going to do better today. And if you don't quite make it, say, all right, I'm going to keep, just don't quit. Don't quit. That
yeah,
the journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. And that means our all good behaviors begin with our saying to ourselves, you know what, I want to change this. So give yourself some grace. You love your child, you want to be better. So just, don't beat yourself up because then you're showing your child how to beat themselves up too. So, forgive
exactly.
yourself and one day at a time, everything works out. And in the book, it's only 60 pages, but everything is tried and true methods of changing children's behavior. Everything in this book is what worked for me when I taught high school, when I taught college, even with the big kids. It works with your little ones from 2 to 16, your teenagers, and it even works with adults. And it's a quick, easy read. You put it in your diaper bag, your toy bag. Always have a bag of toys for your kids wherever you go. Keep them occupied.
Yes,
Don't keep that device
absolutely.
in front of them.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to end the show with the video that you had, which culminates everything that we did. I do want to thank all of you that are here listening tonight, and please like my show, subscribe to my show. It is much appreciated. Thank you very much for being here. And we're going to end tonight with a interview that Martha had that basically summarizes everything we've talked about here tonight. So I just want to encourage you, parents, to understand yourself so that you can better understand your children. And remember to speak life into your children. Speak life into yourself. Yes. Martha, thank you so
Good
much for
advice.
being here. And
Yes. And your
there
children
were
and
several books. I wanted to bring this book up so that we could talk about practical happiness. So you're just going to have to come back so that we can finish this conversation. And in the meantime,
sounds
we're going to close with the video that she has shared with me as a culmination and a conclusion to this show. And Martha, if you wouldn't mind holding off, waiting until we're over, I'd like to talk to you before you leave. Okay. All right. With that, thank
great.
you all. Oh, by the way, Thursday, my guest is Michelle Steiner, and she's going to be talking about. Oh, let me pull it up. She's going to be talking about. I can't see it. Anyway, your own baggage, carrying your baggage, and how to deal with your baggage. So you want to come and check her out on Thursday at 7 o'clock. All right. So we're going to finalize this with your video, and we will see you all on Thursday at 7 o'clock. And again, thank you all for being here. This is awesome. And thank you, Martha, for
And you can
being here.
find me at marthaburich.com. You can find me on my webpage, marthaburich.com.
Yes. Let me put that up here right quick. Yeah, because I had it up for a
And the book
minute.
is available at Amazon.
And you have a free
Yeah,
gift.
well, and they can. Mm-hmm.
Let me put the free gift in the comments, and you can get her free gift by clicking on this link. If you are listening on the podcast, then you're going to go to Martha Burich / how to change your life now. All right. Thank
Well,
you.
that's
We
on my
ran out of
website too.
time. You know what? I don't even have time to play the video now. Oh my goodness.
Okay. Oh, it's 8 o'clock. Oh, it's been wonderful, Vera. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been wonderful having you. So let me close us out, and I'll be right back with you, okay? Don't leave. So thank you all again for being here, and we will see you on Thursday. So God bless.
The